Hey guys, it's Chris from Creator.
And this is Colin from Creator.
So last week I challenged Colin to a building challenge. We used the Star Wars set, Han Solo's land speeder, and used 2 sets to build another spaceship.
Yeah, we did our own mocks, our own takes with the pieces from that set. We also challenged you guys to build your own. We did ours in advance, so we're gonna do our reveal now. You guys still have a bit of time to create yours, so no stress. Keep working on it. We're super excited to see your reveal. But what we wanted to do is do our own reveal and see what we both came up with, and see what we got in store for each other, basically, for our builds.
Now, we haven't seen each other's builds at all, like throughout the week. So this is the first time we're actually gonna see each other's builds. So you guys are gonna get a live reaction of our build.
That's true. Yeah, so we can go ahead and pull them out now, and we can get our first reaction as to what each other's builds look like.
Here we go. Okay, we're just gonna grab it. So Han Solo set. Here we go. You ready?
I'm pretty ready.
3, 2, 1. Whoa!
Oh!
So here's my spaceship. That's Colin's. Now I do have something else. Sorry, I did build a stand for my spaceship.
Nice.
So, and then the other thing was I did have some extra parts. So I built a drone ship, 2 bad guy drone ships, because of course our Han Solo got caught smuggling something, so these things are chasing after him, but tables have turned.
That is awesome.
And
let me get this one out of the way. You can.
Sorry, hold on.
That's okay. No.
And I had them shooting at Han.
Oh no!
So I had 2 pew pews, and Han shoot. Oops, sorry, that wasn't supposed to happen. But Han was supposed to be running away from the bad guys.
Awesome. So Chris went ahead and utilized as many parts as possible, and we'll talk a little bit more about that afterwards, where I used a little bit less parts. But that's super cool. So one of the cool things that he did was he created a scene with the parts. And so you don't always have to be limited when you're making something, especially in a challenge like this, to just the singular ship. Especially sometimes it can be a little bit hard to incorporate all these extra pieces into a single build, especially if you have a very specific idea. So what Chris went ahead and did is built these little micro ships, and these are super cool. I love this kind of stuff. So I'm super pumped that he did something like that. I thought about it. I honestly thought about it, and I thought it might be overkill, and I didn't want to destroy him too badly. But he went and did it. So I think any challenges in the future, it's game on. We're going full for this. But that's super cool. So maybe we can break this down a little bit, and we can talk about each other's builds in a little bit more detail, and so you guys can see a little bit more up close and personal as to what these builds entail. Should we start with yours? Sure, we can start with mine, yeah.
I'll put mine to the side.
Sounds good.
And then we'll go from there.
All right, guys. So this is Colin with my spaceship build. Again, this was utilizing 2 times of the Han Solo's land speeder box that we talked about earlier. So for my ship, I'll talk to you a little bit about where I started and where my initial inspiration was. It was actually interesting. I talked to Chris previously about where he likes to start his ships. Generally, he likes to start from the front, and I always start from the back, so that's kind of cool. But my initial, inspiration was I wanted to utilize these green translucent parts on the inside. I'm not sure if you can see that super clearly. And this was my first thing that I wanted to make. I wanted to use this clear windshield parts to be able to see through and make the power source. So we talked about power sources in the last video as well, and how it's cool that spaceships will have things like a power source, cockpit, landing gear, and everything like that. So I utilized this clear and translucent green pieces to make this interesting sort of glowing green power source, and that's what I started with. And afterwards, I built the back engine portion, So I always like to use trans blue pieces. These pieces are pretty cool if you want to have like a spaceship turbine effect, basically. So it's like a power source coming out of the back, which is kind of cool looking. So I always like utilizing that. So again, I started with the back engines here, the propulsion system, as well as the engine source here, and then I moved my way forward. So I didn't actually end up using the seats from the original set in their original intended purpose. I did end up using them. You'll see them in a second in a cool way. But what I did was I used the printed console piece that was in the original cockpit, but I created a custom seat using a couple of sloped gray wedge pieces instead, as well as using this blue window archway. I thought the shape worked really well for a seat, and the wedge pieces utilized give some good contouring to make it feel more like what a headrest and back support would look like in an actual cockpit chair. But I wanted to add a bit more versatility, so what I did was I actually used a clip in behind the seat itself, and their blasters actually sit there. So I like to think that if they're on a mission, as they get out of their cockpit, what would they need in terms of like their first piece of weaponry? It would be their blaster, and it sits right behind them, which is I think a really cool sort of effect there.
That's super smart.
Yeah, so ooh, we lost a couple pieces there, but that's okay.
Oh.
So after that, I ended up working on the overall shape, and so it has a pretty distinctive trident shape. So it has three initial prongs, and what I did was I actually initially had it laid out with the studs facing upwards like the middle one, but I felt like there was not enough dimension to it. So what I did was I actually used a similar building technique that we did for the original Han Solo's land speeder. And so we used these studs not on top, these are the studs that come out the side instead, to actually help build out these wings in a different orientation than what I originally had planned. And I feel like having that orientation gave it a little bit more dimension to it, so it wasn't just flat everywhere. It allowed me to build some pieces outwards, again, which gave some interesting look and interesting dimension to the wings there. And for the bottom half here, this is where I ended up utilizing those seats. So the actual seats that were in the cockpit, this is the seat that was in the cockpit for the Han Solo build. What I did was, again, I used this L-shaped 2x1 piece that has a 2x2 stud coming out sideways, and I connected them so that I could actually place it in this sort of orientation. And now the actual seat itself has a bit of a curve to it, and what that means is it actually raises it above the level of these plates here. And so when you go to place it down, it gives just enough height that it'll hold it off the ground, just like a landing gear would, and nothing else on the bottom actually touches. So that was my unique way to utilize the seats, and I thought that was pretty fun. Otherwise, again, some hidden stuff. We have the wrench. So basically think about like in the trunk of your car, if you lift out that piece, you're gonna have like your extra tools. So we have a removable wrench underneath here. We also have two extra blasters that are hidden underneath here. You think, again, a smuggler is gonna need some extra weaponry, so I wanted to incorporate that a little bit. Also, I incorporated the two blaster main firing weapons from the original set. These ones are a little bit more hidden. They're not super exposed, but they do end up firing pretty well, and it's quite easy. And I wanted to make sure that the tail of it came out just far enough that you wouldn't have trouble with it. And pew, there it goes. I just actually hit one of Chris's ship dead on. It's down, it's down. I saved the day. And here goes the other one. Yeah, boom, that one went a lot farther. But yeah, that's sort of the overall build from me. This was a super fun build. Again, I really like the combination of this dark blue, this earth blue against white. So it was really fun to be able to utilize so many pieces in a spaceship like this. But yeah, again, the challenge was super awesome. I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone else's, and I'm looking forward to seeing Chris's as well. So let's move over to him and see what he's got to show us.
All right, it's my turn. So this is my spaceship. I actually didn't name the spaceship, but I'm sure I'll come up one after all this. So this is Han's smuggling ship. I kind of based it off Blade Runner. So and I also thought, what kind of ship would exist in a Star Wars universe? So I kind of made it as simple, almost has that 80s vibe to it. And actually, this isn't my first spaceship. What happened was my initial one that I was working on was supposed to be a fighter. Very similar to Colin's. It still had the 2 prongs at the front, but what happened was I smashed it by accident. Like I squeezed too hard in the middle, and it made me realize that I needed to do something to reinforce the sensor. So this is built all ways, so there's no studs underneath other than the ones that I purposely exposed. So it's pretty much like a box itself. But I'll show you guys, this is an extremely illegal technique. I'll start off with the cockpit. This is just a chair stacked, and I did some brick bending, which is really bad for the bricks. But I stacked 3 chairs, and I used two 1x2 plates on top, and just literally placed it over the ship, and like it's just resting. So you can see Han inside, and he does have his own cockpit. There is a way of, maybe if I can do it this way, but there should be a console there and a steering wheel, and the console is directly attached to the front, which I wanted to show an exposed engine, just because, or a power source, whatever it could be. Now, moving forward, this design was really different because I wasn't sure how I should leave it, whether it should be clean, but I wanted to achieve this uniform curve style. But last night I just added a gun section there. So I kept it clean. I tried to color block the entire ship. So I focused, of course, the main color will be the earth blue, but I used the tan as highlight parts. Now, moving forward to the ship, to the front of the ship, usually I start with the front and Colin starts with the back here. But with me, I really wanted guns, but I couldn't figure out the best way to cleanly create guns. But this one was using a tap, the binoculars, and a clip on the side just to add a little detail. Now, these trans orange pieces were really cool. Like when I saw them right beside the dark blue, they really took a nice shine to them. So I used them as like front lights, and I also used them on the back, so they're like tail lights. So there is a little bit of function on them. Now I also added these trans clear boat smooth pieces, basically what you use to put underneath. They're like extremely smooth, they're trans clear, and I use them for lights, so to illustrate lights, as well as these trans pieces here. We do have more lights as well. Now I'm going to quickly flip this over because I wanted to highlight how I used all the black parts to show internal pneumatics. So basically those are like the mechanical pieces of the ship, and I wanted to illustrate that like the blasters originates from the inside of the ship and then fires out. And I also added like little pew pew guns over here, just because I really wanted to use the blasters, but I didn't know how to use them properly. Now, this part was not like a main design that I wanted, but I had to find a way to attach the stand to. So basically this piece right here just sits right here, and it just gives it that elevation. Now it's funny enough, I'm gonna go to the back. Colin did the same thing, but he used dark blue dome pieces for the engines, and he and I had the same thought about the kind of the curve with the grills. So that was a really nice touch that we're still on the same page regardless. This brown here is very odd color to have in the set, but I was very limited with the quantity. So what I wanted to do was utilize this as a highlight color. So basically you go from mostly tan parts throughout the ship, but you have these really rusted brown color, which kind of illustrates like that the ship isn't new. It doesn't have a fresh coat of paint. So I'm just gonna put the cockpit back, Now, just kind of highlight pieces at the back. These are just like panel pieces that I put together just to give it that engine exhaust. But you'll notice in the back, it's mostly dark tan. And that was just because I really wanted to showcase that the engine is a little bit dustier. So the tan kind of got darker from all the dust and dirt from space. And now the only other thing was like I have exhaust here that's actually not held by anything. I needed to fill in the space. So once again, I cheated, and it's literally held by a tile part. So like a one stud connection right there. And it just uses to hold the entire plate. Oh, perfect, there you go. Now, I'm just gonna put the ship down, and I wanna move on to the spaceships, the little drone ships. This one was, I got stuck on my spaceship, so I wanted to come up with a confidence build. So I built a little spaceship just to kind of get my brain working. So I modeled it after a TIE fighter. And you could picture this, if it was the full scene, these guys would be in the back. And they would, of course, be the same size as the spaceship, but they're far in the distance and they're shooting at Han. So these guys are pretty simple to build. I believe they're probably under 30 pieces, but these, I had so many of these and I wanted to use them somehow. So I used them as an engine thrust, and these are basically all the extra pieces that I had that I really wanted to use. Bucket handles from the steering wheel. I had some bars with clips, bars with stud on them. And now I had an extra stick, and this is the cool part. If you guys are ever wanting to get that floating effect, it's always nice to just use a jumper plate and a stick, and then just to make your ship float. It gives it that extra effect. And of course, I used the huge plate I couldn't find a way to use it, but I was thinking it would be on a planet's surface. So this could be a moon that they are floating over. So I had enough pieces to make two drones, and yeah, they're just kind of zooming through space. Now, last thing was I had extra studs, circle studs, and extra clips, and I really wanted to use this, so I just kind of put them up and put them on another gray plate so it looks like they were firing from the moon's surface. But other than that, that's my build. So those are our spaceships.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. It was really exciting to finally see your actual build, because we were texting each other and teasing each other about what we were making, but we didn't want to show each other until the actual video.
Yeah. So
the reactions that you're watching, those are our very first reactions with each other's build. So it's very, very cool. So I think we just had a couple things we want to talk about in terms of each other's builds, some opinions. So Chris, maybe you can start with my build. What were your takes on it? What did you like? What did you dislike? Or what sort of things do you want to comment on?
Well, what I was thinking was, it's funny enough that we were thinking of like the prongs, because like the fact that we were building two separate ships and we weren't like talking to each other about any ideas, that he thought of the two prongs. That was pretty cool. And I like the fact that you use your chairs underneath, because if you guys ever get a chance to see a spaceship, the silhouette is actually quite nice because it actually kind of wraps and it feels more dynamic regardless. And the other comment that I had in my other build was we used both grills as the engine part. That was pretty cool.
So just to touch on that as well, I didn't actually go over it in the build itself, but I wanted to do a little bit of a similar to how we did in the Han Solo. So there's actually some green 1x1 just dot pieces that go inside, and that's to reflect the color of the power source, which is that green. And so as it's getting exhausted, you can see that the inside of this exhaust tailpipe has that same sort of green color, something you'd never see, but I know it's there. So those kind of little things are always fun. So
you guys have to put secret stuff in your spaceship, and you have to let us know. So that's, that, other than that, I mean, I didn't even think about putting Kira with mine. The fact that you thought of putting her in there, super cool. Like, it's really good spaceship. Like, first round, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy with it. I'm excited that it's built now. I'm excited to be able to show it off to everybody finally. So take a look at Creative Industries Instagram, and it'll have all the pictures for both of our ships. One thing I did want to mention as well, and I'm going to use it as a segue into talking about yours,
Sure.
was I built this mostly studs up. Almost the entirety of the ship is studs up, which means it's all facing upwards, except for the prongs, which you mentioned, which I changed after. And I had a similar idea of using the tan pieces on the bottom to show a little bit of a dirtier feel. I wanted to keep the top clean, but as you're like skimming across the land, you would expect some dirtiness to happen underneath. But what I liked about Chris's, and what I'm going to transition to his right now, is I really liked the way that you utilized the. You didn't do stud up the entire time. You actually wrapped the studs in every direction as you went around. So on the bottom, the studs are facing down. On the sides, the studs are facing out. And so that's a little bit more of an advanced technique versus how I decided to build mine. And it probably just came down to him having a little bit more thought process when it came to building than I did, where I just went and then didn't really think about it. But that's really cool. So that's something that I really enjoyed about Chris's ship. As he mentioned, the fact that he did prongs was really cool. We didn't talk to each other about it at all, but we both ended up doing that. And I also thought it was very interesting, very interesting that he decided to do some, illegal builds. We're not
illegal,
quote unquote illegal. Like this, we're not entering this into any sort of crazy competition. So it doesn't really matter what kind of builds you do. But I did have the thought at one point because I wanted to utilize some techniques that may not have been, again, legal in some competitions, but I decided against it. So I thought it was funny that Chris just went for it. But the chairs add a really cool shape, a really cool dynamic to it, and like a little bit of an arc.
Like scales.
Yeah, it looks very scaly, and that's very cool.
And, like with your guys' builds, because you guys are submitting via photo, we won't see any of this stuff, but like this is just floating. Literally, I placed it on there, and that's it.
It almost fell out as I flipped it over.
Just gotta put. Oh. So there is some technique that you have to put it a certain way. Okay, it's broken.
I broke it.
Oh, there
it goes. Other than that, again, things that are cool when you're making a build that I really liked about Chris's is when he mentioned he wanted to use the black parts to showcase that the blasters or the guns at the front of the build actually originated farther back. And basically, if you really look close, and you can see all the pictures when we upload it, it really feels like the mechanics of the ship do start back here, go through this middle core piece or these prongs, and end at the front.
Right.
So those kinds of thoughts, like just thinking about the story behind it, I really liked how we thought about that, and thought about, if this was a real ship, what would there be? What would make it realistic, or what would make it function properly? And if you were to look again at a real ship, then you would see that these mechanical parts start from a core area and then move through. One last thing that I wanted to note, it's so interesting that neither of us used the windshields as windshields.
Yeah, that's right.
We both placed them together and used them as an engine housing.
Wow.
So that's super interesting. That was my first place I started it, and the fact that he did the same thing.
We think very alike.
It's so cool to see that he thought the same way. Other than that, these mini ships are super cool. Again, being able to add a little bit of dynamic, a little bit of extra storytelling is super awesome. These like micro scale ships are simple but so satisfying.
Yes.
And when Chris said he needed like a confidence booster when he was building, sometimes you just get stuck. I know I was at a point where I was just like, is this like the direction that I want to go in? So taking a break and building something like this is a really great way. So overall, I love Chris's ship. I'm really glad that we had two different silhouettes to it.
Yep.
His was a little bit heavier in the back with two shorter prongs. Mine was a little bit flatter, wider with three prongs. Very, very cool. Overall, I'm super pleased with the way the builds turned out. I also really like that he utilized more of the color pieces as accents, where I as a builder find it a little bit more difficult. Sometimes I just get stuck in the 3-color basically building palette, where I just use like a gray, a color, and a white, because sometimes I get afraid to utilize like a 4th or 5th color, so it's really nice to see Chris do that. But otherwise, those were our builds. I think we just wanted to highlight one more thing, and that's the prize.
Oh, yes.
We have one of the sets, and this isn't the entire prize, but for you guys who are submitting, the submission deadline is Sunday. Yeah. And what do we got here, Chris?
So this is the Avenger with Thanos, Iron Man in space, Captain America, Captain Marvel. It's a pretty awesome set. So it's something that it's retired, something awesome that you can't find anywhere, but we thought it'd be a really awesome prize for space. And also we got other stuff too that's gonna come down your way. Now, I know that we have a little bit of a harder time with our build because we challenged ourselves to a set, the Han Solo set, but you guys have your entire collection at home that you can build from. So don't hold back on the colors. Definitely take cues from what we've talked about. I definitely utilize color blocking. So try to keep your ship symmetrical with that color uniformity. But by all means, like build any spaceship with any color, have fun with it, and hopefully you guys win this prize.
Yeah, again, submissions are going to be through the Creator Industries email. You'll find it in previous and subsequent posts. It'll also be in the link down below. Minimum of 4 pictures, please. Other than that, all the details will be provided for you guys, and we're looking forward to it. Again, don't hold back, submit as soon as you can, and build an awesome ship, and we hope you guys can take away this prize. It also doesn't matter where you live, anywhere in the world. So if you guys live not in North America, don't be shy to build. We want to see everybody's.
That's right. And tell us a story. We love stories. We told you our story. Now it's your time to tell us your story.
That's true.
So thank you guys. I've been Chris.
This is Colin. See you in the next video.
Bye.